Hey everybody, it's Father David. Welcome back to Clergy Corner. So one of the things that I want to talk about today, and probably it's the only thing we're going to talk about, I just got back, and all your priests actually just got back from their yearly retreats. And one of the things that came up on one of the yearly retreats, I was talking with some of the other priests in the diocese, because at night we would basically, after we've done all our prayers and our silent time, it was a time for fraternity. I was talking with one of the priests, and he was talking about how in the deanery where he is, so this is like a collection of the parishes in a certain area, he was saying how like within the next 5 years, 5 of the pastors like retire. And it was like, okay, that's only one of our deaneries. And it got me thinking like what Cardinal Donato told us when I entered seminary, he was like, we need to be ordaining 10 men a year to the priesthood to be able to just maintain the amount of priests that we have in our parishes. We ordain 3 a year. Like that's where we are right now. It was really getting me to think about, like, again, our parish, and again, what vocations we've had, or again, what we haven't had, and just to be able to like talk about like what we need to be doing. Our parishes and our home, right? Our homes need to be a place where vocation is fostered. A lot of times we think about occupation for our kids, but we don't think vocation. And vocation, way more important than occupation. And so we need to be talking about and building a culture of vocation, not just in our parish, right, but in our homes, because that's where vocations are fostered. That's where vocations come from. The call is often in the regular, ordinary stuff of life that, again, a person hears. Yes, they might hear at church. They might hear when they're at a youth group or something like that because of some talk, but also even that little seed of like a vocation is going to be fostered at home. So let's talk about that real quick in terms of building a culture of vocations in our homes and families. So first off, what could be some things you could do? Well, pray. Not just obviously pray individually for vocations, but I would encourage you pray as a family. There was a priest like back in the day who said like the family that prays together stays together. Well, the family that prays together as well, like again, can start to notice some of the gifts and charisms that like God has put in their own children or in their brothers and sisters, and they can start to call that forth. But also too, you want to, as a family, like pray, and in the midst of the prayers, like say, like, Lord, and may even vocations to the priesthood or religious life come from our family. Not just pray for like the vocations out there, somewhere else in somebody else's family, from our own families. Because let's be honest, the state of marriage, that vocation, is a beautiful like sacrament. It's the natural sacrament. It's the one thing that's perturbed like since the fall. And God still wants to raise it up again to the level of a sacrament to show forth His glory, the Trinity. Lots of theology can be gone into there. Still, the religious life and the priesthood are technically higher vocations. The religious life actually is called the state of perfection, meaning like it is the way of life that is most geared towards perfecting someone. And then, of course, the priesthood, like, again, to be able to participate, to be able to be ordered to, like Christ Himself, so that our consecrated hands, and again, Him speaking through us, He may make Himself present to His people to do something on their behalf, whether it be forgive them of their sins, whether it be, again, to bring the Eucharist, like Himself, into our presence so that we may consume Him, and thus we be consumed in a sense by Him, be brought into total union and communion with Him. Like, that's amazing. Don't we want that for our kids? And so talk about it. Again, just not just pray for vocations out there, but Lord, like, please, we ask that our children, again, be guided in all your ways of wisdom. Help them to know their vocation. And please, God, if it be your will, your most holy will, allow a priest or religious or a brother or a sister like to come from our family, and trust it then to Mary so that she can, again, foster, as she helped the Christ child, right? Like God in His very human element, grow in wisdom, age, and grace. Like too, we want to always entrust our children to Mary so that she can help them too grow in wisdom, age, and grace and surrender their whole lives to Christ. That's what she does. So, and with that, I would just say, encourage you, like, maybe pray the rosary. Maybe that's what you pray. Again, we have a form, like to be able, if you don't know what to do, like how would we pray? Okay, great, like pray the rosary. Maybe you pray, maybe it's going to be for Lent, or maybe it's during different seasons of the year, you pray like one decade, because maybe you're praying the whole rosary is like way too much for your family because you guys have never prayed together. Okay, that's fine. Start with one decade. Maybe pray that mystery of the luminous mysteries, which is the institution of the Eucharist. And when you pray for that, you pray for more priests, that there may be more priests there, again, to dispense God's grace and to, again, make the sacraments available to us. Because again, as we were reflecting a bit ago, like, if we don't have a lot of priests, like it's going to be very hard to find a priest and to be able to like again get spiritual fathering from them, because they're going to be running around just doing sacraments because there's going to be so few of us. So again, encourage you again to talk to your kids and again pray to God for vocations from your family. Still, other things to do to foster or rather build a culture of vocations is silence. There needs to be silence in the home. Sometimes people go like, Father, my kids can't sit still at Mass. And I'm like, well, is there silence at home? If there's not silence at home, for there only be one place in all of their life that they have to be like, sit still and be quiet, like that's a sure recipe for disaster for them. And so my encouragement, not just talking about like church etiquette, but like we need silence. We are persons who need silence. God speaks in the silence, right? To like Elijah, it was the still small voice that God spoke with. And we have a culture of noise. And there's just so much noise that, again, I don't think our kids can hear the call. That's what a vocation means, a call. They don't hear God's like gentle and respectful voice of them, who doesn't want to like impose upon their free will. No, he wants to invite them, and then they respond. But if it's just a house full of noise and we're not giving them a time like, okay, everybody's going to go read their book. Everybody's going to go pray in silence. And then maybe it's like come together and talk about what happened in prayer, like what they read. But again, they still need that time of silence to be able to hear like God and learn again to be okay with the silence, because I promise you that is where he's going to speak. One of the other ways you could foster silence, because maybe it is difficult at home, especially if it's never been done there, would be the Adoration Chapel. So encourage you, like maybe you're come and drop your kids off at school, run in there for like 5-10 minutes and just be silent. And like, again, show your kids that you want to start the day, everything begins with Jesus. Maybe it's you do beginning and end. Who knows? You pick them up, you park your car and you go get your kid, and then you go to the Adoration Chapel after school. Everything starts and ends with Jesus. Or maybe you just do the after, again, whichever it might be. I know some families at my home parish, and my brother's actually part of this, where a bunch of families all signed up for one of the hours for adoration. So they all know each other. They all know each other's kids. They can all help like equally co-parent and stuff like that. And again, but help their kids focus on Jesus. And then just for a little bit, the little ones to see the older kids like praying and being silent or reading a book, like that's great. And we've seen these little kids like grow in their capacity to pray, to kneel, to look at Jesus. So many beautiful things that come from just, again, being intentional about spending time with Christ and intentional about like making that time to just be silent and sit with God and let him do what he wants to do in the silence of our hearts. Another thing that can be good for fostering vocation is just some of the like basic stuff that arguably we should do in our families is, again, consuming, again, good religious material, and then sharing it. Again, what's going on in our hearts. I encourage you to look at like form.org. You guys can be watching, like not only reading books, you can be like watching movies. There's lots of good Catholic material that's online. Maybe it's one of Father Mike Schmidt's like YouTube videos. Maybe it's a Clergy Corner. I don't know. Like the point is there's so much good content that you could watch as a family and then talk about it afterwards. And that, again, is not only helpful for potential vocations to be, again, raised up. And again, this is not just priest and religious life, but also, again, holy marriages, for saints to rise up. And it's good for us to discuss these things because iron sharpens iron, Scripture says, and we got to learn to talk about our faith, because that's part of our vocation too, is to go forth, right, at the end of Mass, like go in peace with the Prince of Peace out into the world to share the good news so that other people are going to know him. Well, we got to know how to talk about him. So that means we're going to have to like talk about him and learn like how would we articulate this thing that we just learned. That's a really good thing to do at home, because the home is the domestic church. So remember, in your domestic church, like go through these things, read things together. Again, watch, again, beautiful things like Christian things so that you can, and then discuss them so you can learn to articulate the faith. Because guess what? That's part of our call, what we've been incorporated to Christ to do, to be disciples that follow after him, but also disciples who go out with the light of Christ within us to scatter the darkness by showing people the way, the truth, and the life, introducing them to Jesus. But we got to know how to articulate that. So again, all starts at home. You, again, learning things, discussing things, learning how to articulate things. Another thing that helps build a culture of vocations, take people to Mass. Take your children to Mass. My encouragement would be like maybe it's the 6 a.m. Mass on Wednesdays. Maybe it's one of the 6:45 p.m. Masses on Tuesday or Thursday. Maybe that works for your family. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe if you just got the little ones, bring them a 9 a.m. Mass. Like, that's okay. We want children at Mass. Like, for example, altar servers. Traditionally, like, boys have been the ones who have served in the sanctuary. Why? Because it's the place wherein when they're there, and they should be praying, not just serving, like as they're prayerfully serving, like if they feel like at home in that sanctuary, it's a potential sign that they are called to serve the people of God in that sanctuary one day to the priesthood. But the point being, come to Mass. Like, it's going to be at Mass that, again, a young man is going to be able to discern if he's called to the priesthood, because again, Mass should really, really, really feel at home to him. And so, again, to be able to pray in that way. Plus, it's the Mass. It's Jesus. He's there. Like, always encourage you to go to Mass more often, not just Sunday and holy days of obligation. Vocation is about love, and so go to him who is love, because that's where he's going to speak of vocation, and he's definitely present at Holy Mass. And then lastly, I would just say, like, in terms of building a culture of vocation, like as we're talking about love, like acts of charity, right? Like this life, the priesthood, is one of service. The serving capacity of the priest is primarily through the sacraments, where Christ is serving his people through the priest. Doing acts of charity can help the person ponder, like, what level of charity they're called to, like, live in the world. And again, it just gives a space for, again, the still small voice of God to speak into their hearts and in their lives. So encourage. Maybe it's helping out St. Anthony's Bread, like our food pantry. There's surely other charitable things that are in the Woodlands. There's lots of different opportunities. And so encourage you, check those out. You can do them as a family. If their kids are older, like, again, they can do them themselves. But again, encourage people, again, to do charitable works. We're doing an act of love. It again gives us an opportunity to respond to hear and respond to He who is love. So that's it. I just want to encourage, again, us fostering a culture of vocations. Again, God does have a vocation for all of us. He has a call on each one of our lives. The three main states of life, which is what we typically call vocations. Again, married life, religious life, and then of course the priesthood is the other. And so, but we need more priests. And God is a good God. And I promise He's calling more men out there to be priests. The question is, are we providing the environment for them to hear that call? And again, encouraging them to follow that call so they can discern. And then again, God can manifest if that's for them. And then they can respond again with love. So just a quick summary. Again, make sure you're praying, make sure you're striving for holiness. But again, even then, we need to be like forming, building, fostering a culture of vocations. Thing that we got to assess is, like, a healthy, vibrant parish is not one that has like 1 billion parishioners. It's not about like how much money we give. A sign of a healthy parish, one that has true disciples, is how many priests are putting out into the world. How many people are responding to the priesthood and religious life. If we're looking at ourselves, brothers and sisters, like, we got a lot to go. If anything, let's foster this so we can be excited about, like, wouldn't we love it if in like 10 years we got like all these guys in seminary and be like, yeah, those are our boys. Like, all right, like, we're proud that like our parish has become a flourishing place. Like, again, where people, young men are responding to the Lord, young ladies are going to convents. Like, that's a beautiful sign. That takes intentionality, because we got to till the soil. Like in our homes, in our domestic churches, we have to do the work to make sure that, again, God's still small voice can be heard within our children so they can respond to God's vocation. And if it's God's vocation, just be confident that's what's going to make them truly happy. So let's build this culture of vocations, and let's foster it, and let's be intentional about it. St. Anthony of Padua, pray for us.